Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi everyone. I hope that you're healthy and safe. We're going to continue further on with the Treatise on Protecting the Nation. And in this chapter 7, called Question and Answers, Nichiren says, in this 7th chapter, I would like to answer further questions. And he's speaking specifically of having to practice Lotus Sutra, Buddhism, in the light of so many people who are either practicing incorrectly. Specifically, he's addressing all of the Buddhist schools around him of the day that are following erroneous traditions from earlier teachings, which, again, I reiterate, doesn't mean that those teachings are false. It just means that they're no longer appropriate. They were preparatory, provisional teachings to get people to the capacity that they could practice and understand the Lotus Sutra, which is self-practice, right? We know this. Right away, as I get into some of the criticisms he's going to quote from other sects of his day, the Pure Land, the Hoso, the Flower Garland, who else? Zen. He's going to quote their probable and repeated arguments against the Lotus Sutra. And he's going to point out how they are completely off base, wrong. I'm struck, and see if you are, that with just a little bit of reason, well, we have the benefit of 3,000-year hindsight, right? But seriously, knowing what we know, studying Nichiren's doctrine and Shakyamuni's doctrine, let me just start out by saying something that just I've never been able to understand. Siddhartha Gautama is one man, one person. He sets about for 6 or 7 years, depending on which accounts you read, of some extreme practices in order to gain this perfect truth that applies to any sentient being, or insentient for that matter, because it's the nature of the universe and all phenomena itself. But for the purposes of our life as a human being, what interests us is understanding our sentient mind, right? Now, he's one man. When he attains this, when he awakens this universal truth, and he uses it as his primary lens, right? You could look at your mind as having clouded lenses, clear lenses, lenses for understanding, for figuring stuff out, and lenses that just see perfectly. Oh, it's obvious. That's water. That's dirt. That's a rock. I mean, really obvious. That's Buddha. Not a human, not a spirit, not a condition of the world so much as a condition of understanding, of perception, of seeing clearly what is actually going on, not being fooled by attachments and desires and all the rest. Yeah? So we know this. When Siddhartha Gautama attains this awakening and maintains it so that he can tell others and train others to get their minds to awaken that same Buddha condition, that Buddha enlightenment. He is known as Shakyamuni, the great sage from the Shakya clan, Shakyamuni. And the appellation Buddha is given to him because everyone's just now, for the first time ever, known about something called Buddha. Yeah? Now, in years of sermons and storytelling to train people, Shakyamuni uses the device of storytelling to get people to understand concepts. And he talks about this Buddha and that Buddha and this Bodhisattva and that Bodhisattva. Personages, right? He makes up roles, like we talk about Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf. And, you know, when we go into the woods, we don't look for a bipedal, menacing big bad wolf. You know, it's a conceptual understanding that wolves are wild creatures and can do you great harm. We understand the difference between a story and reality, don't we? Haven't we always? So, for these supposedly educated scholars of other sects of Buddhism to then say that one Buddha is more real than another, what kind of fantasy world are they living in? There is only one Buddha. Even if you're talking about the Buddha historical, it's Shakyamuni. All of these other Buddhas are manufactured emanations, imaginary conceptual placeholders for processes of the mind, understanding what it is to attain, to work through, to understand the workings of the mind. You'll understand what I mean immediately as I get into this, but it still bewilders me. How do you consider yourself an authority without being disingenuous to tell somebody, oh yeah, Shakyamuni Buddhist teachings, they're all right, but the real Buddha is this imaginary one? What drugs are you taking? What of this teaching do you not get? It's flabbergasting to me. But here we go. In this 7th chapter, I would like to answer further questions. Suppose even 1 out of 10,000 ignorant people in the latter age are converted by the explanations and previous 6 chapters of this treatise to the Lotus Sutra. Yay. Followers of other sects, having confidence in expedient sutras, the storytelling, because of either their doubts about the Lotus Sutra, that's being kind, or bigotry coming from their own sects, more likely, will try to corrupt believers of the Lotus Sutra, criticizing them with citations from the pre-Lotus Sutra, the pre-Lotus Sutras, Lotus Sutra criticizing them with citations from the pre-Lotus Sutra and Nirvana Sutras. Moreover, as there are many believers of expedient sutras, right, they may either threaten the true followers by their sheer numbers, induce others with worldly goods, or chant for a new car, right? Or harshly condemn them to making a living by catering to the whims of people. Or, as there are many scholars among believers of expedient teachings, and merely a few wise persons among followers of the true teaching, just by sheer numbers, not even 1 out of 10,000 believers of the true teaching would survive the criticism and attack of other sects. How sad that may be. This is the reason why I wrote this chapter, in order to fend off false attacks by followers of expedient teachings. Interesting. So, first question. Scholars of other sects, would criticize the Lotus Sutra as follows. The Kigan, or Flower Garland sect, would say something like this. Quote, the Flower Garland Sutra was preached by the reward body, Varochana Buddha. See, there it is, an imaginary Buddha. And only one body, a reward body. In the Lotus, all three bodies, right? So, right off the bat, this just doesn't make sense. But at 7 places in 8 assemblies, and it represents the true intent of the Buddha, promptly leading to Buddhahood, whereas the Lotus Sutra was preached by the accommodative-bodied Shakyamuni Buddha. I've never heard that term before. Accommodative? You know, he just happened to be around. He's the one who started it. The lords of these 2 sutras are not equally same. Yeah. How can there be no difference in the depth of their preachings? Right, ask yourself. While the congregation who listened to the preaching of the Flower Garland Sutra was only of great bodhisattvas, such as Fa Hui, Kung Te Lin, and Ching Kwang Chui, exclusive of the Sravaka and Pratyeka Buddha, the congregation of the Lotus Sutra was of Sravaka and Pratyeka Buddha, such as Shariputra. Now that's just factually wrong. Oh man. I mean, if you've read the Lotus Sutra and slogged through those early chapters of all the people that were there, the laity, the laymen, the laywomen, the Shravakas, the Pratyeka Buddhas, the Arhats, the Bodhisattvas, the this and that. Hell, we even brought all of the Bodhisattvas from the future up from the beneath the earth, right? I mean, the Lotus Sutra has a massive audience, making the point that the Lotus Sutra is for all sentient beings of every caliber of understanding, of teaching, of learning, of capacity. So how is it just Sravaka and Pratyeka Buddhas are the... What? That's just outright, demonstrably wrong. And that's their argument for why the Kigan is superior? It's just full of holes and hogwash, right? And yet, if that argument... And this is Nichiren writing this. If that argument could hold water in his day, in medieval Japan, the only reason that could hold any sway on any practitioner is that they're completely ignorant. Either they're illiterate, they haven't read any of the sutras, which is entirely likely. We have that situation today. People are making decisions about Buddhism who haven't even read the Lotus Sutra, let alone any other sutra, or more than a dozen Gosho, right? How can you make such a profound decision without informing yourself? I remember Shakyamuni said this. You must study for yourself. You must study all of Buddhism, because by doing that, you will protect yourself from being swayed by groups with certain agendas, and you will learn for yourself in your own mind the actual teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. And the meaning will come out. It will become obvious to you, just like this. This argument completely falls apart at every stage simply because we know better. Right? Buddhism isn't difficult. The difficult part is you and I making sure we understand what Shakyamuni taught, not what Bruce thought, not what John is telling us. Right? Not, I could name names, but, right? Based on the Revealing the Profound and Secret Sutra, the Hoso, Dharma Characteristics sect, would criticize, this is what this other sect would probably say, the Revealing the Profound and Secret Sutra was preached to such great bodhisattvas as Manjushri and Avalokitesvara. And it is, therefore, more profound than the Lotus Sutra, which was preached for Shravaka and Pratyekabuddha. Okay, if I go way out on a limb and I say that the Lotus Sutra, as Nichiren has repeated many times, and the Lotus Sutra itself says, only in the Lotus Sutra can Shravaka, Pratyekabuddha, those Hinayana arhats, only through the self-practice of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo can those people break their ichantika behavior and fulfill complete Buddhahood. Otherwise, they're just written out of everything. Those people are so stuck on their brain and what they can memorize that they simply can't get beyond it. Right? Every other teaching says that. And yet, these other teachings are using it as an accusation against the Lotus Sutra. In what twisted, upside-down, silly-putty world are these people talking? Let's move on. According to the understanding of Shogisho Bodhisattva, all the Buddhist scriptures are divided into three: temporal, void, and the middle way. There's that void thing. I don't know if that's translation error or if that's intended, but you know that's not the right understanding of emptiness, right? Of the three teachings, the middle way teaching is supreme, which consists of such sutras as the Flower Garland, Lotus, Nirvana, and Revealing the Profound and Secret. That is to say, the Lotus Sutra is about equal to the Revealing and Profound and Secret Sutra in profundity of teaching. Oh, we'll give it that. On the contrary, confirmation of the Grandmaster Tendai's 5-period doctrine in the Understanding by Confidence and Resolve chapter of the Lotus Sutra is expressed through the understanding by 4 great Shravaka. As we compare the two sutras, the Revealing the Profound and Secret Sutra and the Lotus Sutra, although both preach the same middle way, as the former was understood by a bodhisattva while the latter by Shravaka, there must be as great a difference in superiority between them as heaven and earth. Again, this is baseless. There's one or two, there's several chapters in the Lotus Sutra where Shakyamuni takes on Shariputra and explains to him very early on, there are not 3, there are not 2, there is only this one vehicle. Then he takes on Devadatta, somebody who tried to injure and maybe take the life of Shakyamuni Buddha. Very educated, but very stuck, right? And he took him on in the Lotus Sutra and predicted his Buddhahood, right? Again, these are people of earlier teachings who are stuck. Over and over again in the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni takes these personages that he created decades before, and with all of their skills and knowledge, were not able to attain Buddhahood, or in millions of lifetimes, right? But in the Lotus, provides for them with this teaching, Myoho Renge Kyo, that they can. So again, how distorted is it for these people to say, well, they only did it for the scholars, the Shravakas, right? They didn't even include Pratyekabuddhas here. No. What Shakyamuni was doing was destroying those old belief systems that got inculcated into earlier teachings. No, you're not inhibited by this. He was calling out certain followers for letting go of what they thought they knew and re-experience their potential enlightenment through Myoho Renge Kyo. It wasn't taught specifically for them. There were different levels of people he was addressing who would be stuck in earlier teachings. He was releasing them. This is a great obfuscation. Again, the Jodo, the Pure Land sect, would quibble. I love that word, quibble. We do not slander sutras such as the Lotus Sutra, which were preached chiefly for those great people like bodhisattvas. Oh, okay, well, at least they're not talking about Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas. They're saying it was taught solely for bodhisattvas. It was demonstrating the pinnacle of practice. It wasn't taught only for those extant bodhisattvas. It was, look, the bodhisattvas from beneath the earth are future bodhisattvas. That's you and I. That's the way of practicing the Buddha way, is as a bodhisattva, not because the other are irrelevant. Because all of us, when we start, are students. We're ignorant. And we educate ourselves. And then we have realizations, right? All of the 10 realms, which, by the way, aren't part of the earlier teachings. So all of this hierarchy talk is about depth of understanding. And the only reason that there's a focus on bodhisattva practice in the Lotus Sutra is because that's the ultimate practice. Not that only people at that level can practice it, but that's the goal for everyone who practices it, to live a human life coursing through this world as a bodhisattva, in other words, as a human with the attitude that I'm going to maintain my clarity, my Buddha-ness in my samsaric mind, and therefore thereby influence the world around me and help others to do the same. That's all that means. But these people are so stuck on qualifying words, typing people, cubby-holing people. They miss it. Or they don't miss it, but they use it as a false argument, right? Which is how Nichiren started this. Well, you heard me say it. Sometimes I just can't find my own words. All right. They preach the profound doctrines to eliminate evil passions and attain enlightenment. I missed a sentence. Lotus Sutra was preached chiefly for those great people like bodhisattvas and only secondarily for us, the ignorant. No, you are ignorant. It's about turning you into a bodhisattva. They preach profound doctrines to eliminate evil passions and attain enlightenment. Even if we, the ignorant in the latter age, would practice them, not even 1 out of 1,000 would have the capacity to be able to understand those doctrines. Baloney. Besides, many laypersons are illiterate, having never heard even such as flower garland and dharma characteristics, not to talk about their teachings. Under the circumstances, the Pure Land sect maintains that if only we, the ignorant, chant the 6-character title of the Buddha of infinite life, the Nembutsu, Amida Butsu, right? Praise be to Amida Butsu, a character made up by Shakyamuni, the Buddha will dispatch 25 bodhisattvas to this Saha world to protect us. Practicers surrounding us thick and fast as the shadow follows the body. Wow. Talk about storytelling. Therefore, so long as we chant the Nembutsu, we will be free of the 7 disasters and have 7 happinesses in this world. By the way, those 7 disasters, they're surrounding everyone in Japan at the time. Nichiren pointed that out. So how well is that working out for you? At the last moment of life, the Buddha of infinite life will never fail to welcome us, taking us upon the lotus pedestal of the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, promptly to the Pure Land, where lotus blossoms bloom according to our karma, while we listen to the Lotus Sutra and become enlightened to the truth of all phenomena. Why should we bother with ways difficult to practice in this impure world? Is there anything good about it? Instead, we should concentrate on calling the name of the Buddha of infinite life, putting aside everything else. Now, that's a really interesting statement, that last part. That, first of all, as I've said before, there's this religious idea that life is simply to be suffered. It's some kind of atonement, some kind of a gauntlet that we have to go through. And we can only be happy after we croak. What kind of magic is that? That's insane to me. But pay attention. Not only does it say that, this imaginary Buddha is going to come in at the last moment, your last breath, and then you're dead. Therefore, your mind no longer exists, so you can't experience squat. You're now going to this pure land where you get to listen to the Lotus Sutra. What? Oh yeah, the Lotus Sutra is all right, but it's only good after you're dead. Really? That's so nuts. And now, finally, I think, I don't know if he's going to have any other sects in here, but these are the primary sects he's always calling out, right? Zen. And boy, I was a child of the growing up in the 70s. I heard a lot about Zen. Zen people would say, Nichiren goes on, all the scriptures of Buddhism are like a finger pointing to the moon, which is useless after seeing the moon. Such things, by the way, that's a twisted recounting, I don't want to call it that, but it's based on something Shakyamuni said as an accusation for those not understanding the meaning and instead getting hooked on the words rather than seeking out the meaning of the statements, the words, the teaching, right? The Dharma, not the words of the teaching. At any rate, such things as heaven, earth, the sun, the moon, all stem from illusions of your mind. Pure lands throughout the universe are shadows of your greedy mind. Shakyamuni Buddha and his replicas, manifested in the worlds throughout the universe, are variations of your enlightened mind. There's a lot of truth in that. But let's see how they use that argument. Those who attach themselves to letters are as ignorant as hunters who keeps on guarding a stump with which a hare once collided and died. Our Grand Master Bodhidharma, without using letters or other expedient means, transmitted this Dharma of Zen, which the Buddha had entrusted directly to Kashyapa. In addition to the holy teaching of his lifetime, sutras such as the Lotus Sutra do not reveal the true intent of the Buddha. Then why are you repeating the concepts of the Lotus Sutra, albeit in your special way? The Zen, I would say, are a cult of, Bodhidharma was the Indian monk who was hired to come to the Shaolin monks in northern China and train them in Buddhism so that they might be more successful. They were thin, they were dying of starvation. Marauders were constantly robbing them of their stores of rice, any kind of food they had. They were rather pathetic. Yes, that's how Shaolin started. And Bodhidharma noticed that they couldn't even meditate. They were in such poor physical shape. And one of the first things he started to teach them, after many years of thinking it through, was the tendon and sinew developing workout, basically. So they were physical moves and breathing and balance that would tone the bodies of these monks so that they could be healthy enough to not only meditate with energy and concentration, but that they could also defend their food stores. This is the whole legend of Bodhidharma. So, although he represents not an exchange, but a bringing of Buddhism to China in the form of the Shaolin temples and others, he was melding, first of all, getting these people in shape, which you could call Buddhism or not. But certainly there's a symbiosis between mind and body, is there not? It's a line throughout Buddhism, but Buddhism is fully committed to the mind. That's where Buddhism exists. Attitude, intent, right? So the physical portion is really more of an inculcation of the Taoist thinking that was prevalent at the time. Taoist meditation, Taoist temple practices of these monks. So there came this melding of Buddhism and Taoism, and what evolved was a deeply focused internal training of mind-body relationship. And this is throughout the martial arts. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's very powerful. It's very useful. I taught martial arts for years. I learned it for years, right? Since childhood. Anyway, that's another story. What I'm saying, though, is that that's where Zen stops. Zen is completely admired in that physical relationship to mind only, right? Throughout the universe and are variations of your enlightened mind. But you find your health, your body, your ability, your samsaric reality through your mind. And then they adopt this void thinking, right? And, those are steps along the way. Those are provisional. That's why Nichiren opened this dialogue up to talk about earlier teachings, pre-Lotus Sutra teachings. Now, over the years, the Lotus Sutra cannot be denied. It's there. So even Tibetan Buddhism incorporates the Lotus Sutra, but only in recent history. And they don't explore it. It's another teaching of Buddha, right? And that's a whole nother story as well. So they're missing the point here of enlightenment. And they're really preoccupied with their attachment to samsara being a manifestation of the mind, rather than an experience, a real experience of the mind, although alternately could be experienced through Buddha-ness as a clear understanding of samsara. There's a built-in denial of samsara and the physical world in Zen. It's as they're chasing this void that doesn't exist. It's very corrosive. All right, Nichiren goes on. These are some criticisms by other schools of Buddhism against the Lotus Sutra. How can we defend confidence in the Lotus Sutra against these accusations? All right, so here we go. Answer. Practicers of the Lotus Sutra should keep deeply in mind such scriptural statements as the following, quote, "The truth has not been revealed in sutras preached during the pre-Lotus 40 years or so," right? How many times have we heard that quote? The Sutra of Infinite Meaning, yeah? Quote, "Of all the sutras which have already been preached, are now being preached, and will be preached, this sutra is the most difficult to believe and understand," the 10th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Quote, What is preached by Shakyamuni Buddha is all true, end quote. The 11th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. And, quote, rely upon the Dharma, not the word of persons, the Nirvana Sutra. However, these should not be mentioned. When criticized by followers of other sects, you should conversely ask, on what sutras are their teachings based? If they answer your question by citing sutras, you should ask them when, during the Buddha's 50-year lifetime of preaching, their sutras were preached, whether it was before, after, or at the same time as the Lotus Sutra, or undetermined, right? Because some things like Zen adopt teachings from outside of Shakyamuni's teachings. If their answer is before the Lotus Sutra, you should then challenge them with the passage, the truth has not been revealed, so on and so forth, right? You need not ask about the content of their sutras. It's irrelevant. You're arguing about potato patata. How many eggs should go in, whether you like more eggs or less eggs. Don't get into that. Just use Shakyamuni's own words. Shakyamuni said this. Do you disagree with Shakyamuni Buddha? If their answer is after, you should confront them with the statement of all the sutras which will be preached, so on and so forth. If they answer at the same time as the Lotus Sutra, you may confront them with the statement of all the sutras which are now being preached, ... If they answer they don't know when their sutra was preached, you should know that those which are not known when preached are unimportant, expedient sutras preached on particular occasions for particular persons. They are not worthy of discussion. Besides, even those sutras without a particular date must have been preached either before, after, or at the same time as the Lotus Sutra. Right? Covered, done. Even if those sutras expounded hundreds, thousands, and 10,000s of doctrines, unless it is stated in them that during the 40 years or so in the Sutra of Infinite Meaning is untrue, you should not believe in them. This is because the Buddha bequeathed it to us. Do not rely on sutras which do not thoroughly reveal the truth, end quote. Even if followers of other sects accuse you by citing words of such Chinese patriarchs as Qi Hian of the Flower Garland sect, Chia Shang of the Sun Lun sect, Tsuyen or Kui Chi of the Fa Shrang Hoso sect, and Shandao of the Pure Land sect, lauding their high virtue, you must not trust those Buddhist monks who contradict the teaching of the Lotus Nirvana Sutras. It is because you stay firm with the words of the Buddha, quote, rely on the Dharma, not the word of persons. Question. For ignorant believers of the Lotus Sutra, I shall also explain two kinds of conviction and resolve. First, the resolve through the Buddhas, and second, resolve through the sutras. First, I shall explain the establishment of conviction and resolve by Buddhas. Suppose scholars of other sects, believing in expedient sutras, came to challenge us by saying, Venerable Jantao, who attained enlightenment by concentration of thought on the Nembutsu, is an avatar of the Buddha of infinite life. Grandmaster Tsuen, an avatar of the 11-faced Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, is said to have poured out ashes of the Buddha from the tip of his writing brush. They both have established their teachings based on scriptural passages in respective sutras. Why do you not believe in their sutras and opinions? Well, that's wonderful, colorful language, but it's made up. It's not the actual words of Shakyamuni Buddha in the sutra. Anyway, answer. Listen carefully. Suppose grand masters and late monks of virtue of all other sects, Shariputra and Madhyalayana, such bodhisattvas as Universal Sage, Manjusri, and Avalokitesvara, and such Buddhas as Infinite Life, Medicine Master, and Shakyamuni would come together in front of us declaring, quote, "The Lotus Sutra is unsuitable to our capacity, and therefore it would be better for us to practice such expedient means or teachings as the Nembutsu, to be reborn after death in the Pure Land, where we should be awakened to the truth of the Lotus Sutra." Oh, it's back. Even if they should preach that to us, even given that, we should never listen to them. The reason is that the title of the Lotus Sutra was never mentioned in sutras preached during 40 years or so before the Lotus Sutra. How can there be any of those pre-Lotus Sutra discussing their suitability to the capacity of the people in comparison to the Lotus Sutra? Yeah. How can you say that your book on adding and subtracting fractions, numbers, teach that we should not learn algebra? Teach that it's superior to algebra. Algebra hasn't even been mentioned. It doesn't exist yet. How could your book on adding and subtracting fractions call out algebra, which doesn't exist yet? Do you see the Nichiren is so plain as duh? You know? This has to come afterwards by those who would manipulate people for their own agendas. This can only come from people who know the Lotus Sutra. So why are you practicing these earlier sutras and your opinion saying that they're superior to something which came much later as a result of the training of these earlier sutras? It defies logic, doesn't it? There's no rationale to that. In the Lotus Sutra, however, Shakyamuni and the Buddha of many treasures and replica Buddhas from I love that they use replicas in this translation, from various worlds in the universe, gathered together to make a choice in the Lotus Sutra, the ceremony in the sky, the sermon itself. All of these Buddhas, potential, future, now, past, Buddha-ness, the whole goal of Buddhist practice, Buddha-ness, comes to attention in the Lotus Sutra to declare, quote, "We will ensure that this Dharma, Lotus Sutra, lasts forever." And, quote, "We'll see to it that after the death of the Buddha, it will spread widely in this world without being destroyed," end quote. Suppose a new Buddha, besides these three, appeared and decided that the Lotus Sutra was unsuitable to the latter age. It would contradict the decision made by the three, quote, Buddhas in the Lotus Sutra, three being the collections of, right? This new Buddha would be no other than a demon in the shape of a Buddha, as predicted in the Nirvana Sutra, to appear after the death of the Buddha in order to destroy Buddhism. We should not believe in such Buddhas, much less those below them, such as bodhisattvas, shravakas, and monks. No doubt, they are demons in the shape of bodhisattvas after the demise of the Buddha, as predicted in the Nirvana Sutra. The reason for me to say this is that the place for preaching the Lotus Sutra is not limited just to Mount Sacred Eagle, or Vulture Peak, or whatever it's called in various translations, but expands beyond this world to innumerable other worlds. Filling this vast world, bodhisattvas, shravakas, and pratyeka Buddhas, human and heavenly beings, and 8 kinds of gods and semi-gods who protect Buddhism, vowed at the request of the Buddha to spread the Lotus Sutra in their respective lands of residence. If such as Shandao were avatars of Buddhas or bodhisattvas, why did they not propagate the Lotus Sutra after spreading expedient teachings first, as Nagarjuna and Vasubandhu had done? Why were they not among those who requested the Buddha to spread the Lotus Sutra? Why did they not propagate the Lotus Sutra after spreading expedient sutras first, as the Buddha had done? Unless this order of preaching is followed, we should not believe in a Buddha. As I explained here, why we should believe in Buddhas of the Lotus Sutra exclusively, I entitled this section, The Establishment of Conviction by Buddhas. Question. Shall I go on? 45 minutes. I'll just read this is real short. If you call what was preached by Shakyamuni Buddha the true teaching, because it was attested to by the truth, as the truth by other Buddhas, why do you not believe in the Pure Land Sutra? Answer. I do not believe in the Pure Land Sutra because it was not attested to as the truth by other Buddhas, as the Lotus Sutra was. Duh. Next question. In reading the Pure Land Sutra, we can see that when Shakyamuni Buddha preached the chanting of the Nembutsu for a day, by the way, Shakyamuni didn't teach that. That was Amida. For a day or 7 days, Buddhas in the worlds of the 6 directions, east, west, south, north, above, below, attested to it by stretching their tongues, each covering the whole world. Why do you say that the Pure Land Sutra has no validity? Answer. The Pure Land Sutra was not at all validated by other Buddhas, as the Lotus Sutra was. In the Pure Land Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha alone preached to Shariputra. It is, quote, it is not only I who preach the Pure Land Sutra, but also Buddhas in the worlds of the 6 directions stretched their tongue to cover the whole world preaching the sutra, end quote. However, this is what was said by Shakyamuni Buddha alone. It was not that Buddhas in the worlds in 6 directions came to verify it. And an important distinction there is that covering the world is, the use of the tongue as a visual is to talk about the depth of preaching, the breadth of preaching, where the preaching reaches. And it's very important to understand that when the tongues came out, they circled the world. But in the Lotus Sutra, the tongues went all up and disappeared into the Brahma heaven. In other words, the entire universe, not just this samsaric world. Huge difference. Besides this is a statement in an expedient sutra. During the 40-odd years of the pre-Lotus period, the Lord Buddha was also expedient Buddha, an accommodative Buddha, who attained Buddhahood for the first time under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. Since the Lord Buddha was an expedient Buddha, what was preached by him must have been expedient. Therefore, what was preached by an expedient Buddha during the 40 years or so must not be believed in. Again, reiterating this point. Expedient is expedient. It is not the teaching. It is the training for the teaching. It is the provisional, the expedient, the storytelling to wrap minds around a different way of considering life, how they experience it, what their attachments are, what precipitates suffering. The whole point of Buddhism was to live this life well. Why would you wait till it's over to go someplace else? Siddhartha's prime incentive in awakening, whatever that was to be called, was to understand how to rid ourselves in this life of stress, anxiety, pain, suffering. There has to be an answer to that. That's what Buddhism is. It's not about getting out of this life as unscarred or unscathed as you possibly can so that you can have fun after you die. That's religion. That's magical thinking. That's nonsense. Contrary to this, the Lotus Nirvana Sutras are the veracious teaching of the perfect Buddha who attained true enlightenment in the eternal past. In other words, Buddha as a state of knowing, not as a human. Attainable by all humans, yes, because it is a clarity of seeing the nature of life throughout the universe, from time without beginning, time without end, because there is no time. All of that. We've talked about it so many times. Trustworthy words revealing the principle of, quote, mutual possession of the 10 realms. Moreover, the Buddha of many treasures and Buddhas manifested in the world throughout the universe came to attest their truth. Therefore, we put conviction in them. The teaching of the Pure Land Sutra, on the other hand, is completely invalidated by the statement in the Sutra of Infinite Meaning, the truth has not been revealed during the 40 years or so. Besides, its validation was made by Shakyamuni Buddha alone, not by all of the Buddhas, all Buddha-ness. Shakyamuni Buddha being Shakyamuni, a human who awakened this clarity. The clarity itself is what attests. Remember statements like only Buddhas can be understood by other Buddhas, can understand these teachings. You have to attain awakening in order to really capture, oh, that's awakening. That's Buddha-ness. Secondly, I'll just finish this. Secondly, let me explain the establishment of conviction by sutras. Referring to the sutras preached during the 40-odd years, the Sutra of Infinite Meaning states, quote, the truth has not yet been revealed, end quote. The Nirvana Sutra declares, quote, Buddha would not purposely lie, but he may have preached expedient teachings as necessary when he is convinced that it would benefit people more. In other words, he's training to their capacity to get them to stretch their understanding. The sutra also states, Nirvana Sutra, quote, rely on the sutra that reveals the whole truth. Do not rely on the sutras that do not thoroughly reveal the truth, end quote, which is a statement that only makes sense once you study it. Many more of these kinds of scriptural statements can be found declaring that those sutras preached by the Buddha himself during 40 years or so, without exception, are falsehoods. I question the use of that word falsehoods. They're expedient means. They're stories. They're not complete. Expedients. Sutras not revealing the whole truth, and teachings about devils, obstacles, things that will get in the way, the functions of the samsaric mind. This is solely for the purpose of guiding people to abandon their expedient sutras and enter into resolve in the Lotus Nirvana Sutras. For what reason do people, however, adhere to their expedient sutras, practice them, and attempt to attain Buddhahood? In this section, I explained that we should get rid of our adherence, our attachment to expedient teachings, putting solely our energies, our resolve, our conviction in the true teachings. Therefore, I call this section the establishment of conviction by sutras, which is what you and I are doing right now. And this will finish this treatise, so it's not even a paragraph, so let me do that. Question. Venerable Shandao also mentions the establishment of faith or conviction by persons and by practices. What is the difference between his contention and yours? Answer. Shandao's conviction is based on the triple Pure Land Sutras, such as the Pure Land Sutra, without making distinction between the sutra, quote, thoroughly revealing the truth, and, quote, those not thoroughly revealing the truth. Among all the scriptures preached during his lifetime, therefore, Shandao's doctrine based on sutras not revealing the truth thoroughly would be defeated in debate by my doctrine based on the Lotus Nirvana Sutras, sutras revealing the whole truth. And now we have a series of notes regarding that. So we have completed we have completed the treatise on protecting the nation. Interestingly enough, we never got to any statements directly relating to protecting the nation, did we? That's an interesting aside. But as I've said before, Nichiren takes on the idea of foreign invasion, famine. We've read, and we will read more, on his demonstrations of, the previous Tripitaka masters praying for rain, and the conditions of Japan in his day, more importantly, of famine and great storms and earthquakes and invasion from abroad, the Mongols and China, right? And even Korea, right? Even Korea, because in size comparison, that's all I'm saying. Buddhism, broadly speaking, and Buddhism, strictly speaking, deals with a life condition as a mirror of mind condition. Buddhism is about the mind, but what about the mind is attitude and intent. Our vehicle, our apparatus, is our body. So the mind cannot go where the body does not exist, because the mind is an emergent property of the body. Therefore, if we practice correctly, our body follows correctly. And if our body follows correctly, remember influence. I'm always talking about influence. If your mind is right, if you are coursing the world as a bodhisattva with the Buddha way, keeping Buddha clarity, influencing the world around you with that energy, that Buddha clarity, then that influenced world starts to move toward the same goal of enlightened being. At some point, it becomes simply logic that wars would no longer hold the power of the decision-making of human beings. It would just seem nonsensical. It would seem completely non-productive. And because that energy would be life-affirming, the land would also feel that influence. And that influence would also travel across the seas and through other borders and affect those people. And they would feel less motivated by violence. And if they were still motivated to interact somehow, it would be more toward an interaction of negotiation, of finding middle grounds, of human affirming acts. This would even affect the planet, the solar system, the universe. Negative potential energy, positive potential energy. It's just that simple. And so, yeah, his focus is on, if you practice correctly, if you understand and nurture your mind toward awakening and the attainment of Buddhahood in this moment, you are acting in the protection of the nation, as you are protecting yourself, your relatives, those around you, the world at large, so on and so forth. It's just built in. But you notice it's a really interesting statement to say that, because the title isn't discussed anywhere in the meat of the treatise itself. It's just a known, an expectation. Yeah? So that's an interesting aside, and I'll leave it at that. And we will continue. There's a short one here called Sainan Koki Yurai. Introduction. First, the cause of misfortunes. Okay, this may go. The format of this book is quite different. The cause of misfortunes. Treatise on elimination of calamities. See, we got a lot more from Nichiren to read on the nature of Buddhism and environment. But for now, thank you for listening. It went a little longer than I expected to, but I'm glad we were able to put a closure on this treatise. I hope that you got some insights from all of this. And any questions, maybe I wasn't clear about something, please ask in the comments. That's what they're there for. Or email me directly. And don't forget to like, subscribe, please subscribe. And to my patrons and supporters through Patreon and PayPal, you guys are amazing. And please, all of you, keep your practice strong. The world is in scary shape right now. So we want to protect ourselves and our neighbors and our relatives and our world and our country and our planet, blah, 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 right? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I will see you in the next one. I promise I'll be here. And having said that, bye for now.